Hello and welcome to Dawn Chorus Writes, a Miraculous Ladybug fanfiction and audio fiction. This is a special 7-part series called The 7 Stages of Life, especially for Adrienette April. Each part is inspired by the prompt list, but it spans the relationship of Adrien and Marinette, but it is also an AU, so it is an alternative. I hope you really enjoy it. The amazing artwork is a commission piece by Jade Carol, and she's done an amazing job, so make sure you go and send her some love. All her information is down below. Each part will have its own image as well as the collaboration piece in front. Part 1 also is written by Jheqia. She has written 2 of these and I have written the other 5. So it is a collaboration between the 2 of us. And so make sure you go and smash that like button. Comment down below what you think of it and what will happen in the next stage of life, and make sure you subscribe so you do not miss out on this series and other one-shots and other treats that are coming your way, and I hope you enjoy. Childhood. Marinette, age 9 and first time at camp. Marinette stared out of the car window, fidgeting with her pigtails nervously. "But what if the other kids don't like me, Mom? Like it is at school?" she asked softly, watching the trees go by as they followed the narrow road deeper into the woods. "You'll be fine, my sweetheart," her mother said, turning to look back at her from the front seat. "You've said that the other kids don't like you because of that Chloe girl and how she bullies you. We have checked and double-checked, and Chloe isn't going to be there. It will give you a chance to breathe and just be yourself. Give yourself a chance, and I bet you will make lots of friends." "And I expect to see all sorts of ribbons and crafts from my amazing daughter when we come to pick you up in 2 weeks," her papa said proudly, grinning at her in the rearview mirror. 2 weeks. 2 weeks of sunshine and fresh air. 2 weeks without her mom's gentle caresses or her papa's giant hugs. She stared out the window, hoping that they would be right, that she would make friends. She watched as they passed under a large wooden archway with a sign reading, "Welcome to Camp Adventure." The trees opened up to reveal a large open area covered with tennis and basketball courts, volleyball, horseshoes, and children running everywhere. Marinette's eyes widened, and she pressed her nose to the window at the sight of the quaint little cabins and the lake glittering in the distance, completely oblivious to her mother's chuckles. They pulled up to the large stone building with a huge porch, with families streaming in and out of the large double doors. "Let's get you signed in, sweetie," Papa said as he parked the car. Her wonder turned to shyness and fear once more as they gently guided her into the enormous building. Inside, the large room was set up with long tables and folded chairs like a school cafeteria. At the far end was a large fieldstone fireplace with a table in front of it, with several grown-ups with laptops and file folders. Her parents got into the line behind the sign marked A to E. Marinette hid behind her papa at the sight of all these strangers. The family in front of them was very imposing, the papa being tall and thin with very blonde hair, unlike her own bear-hug papa. Her maman had a side ponytail of the prettiest blonde hair she had ever seen and was cuddling a blonde boy about her own age. He peeked around his mother's side to look at her shyly. He had the greenest eyes, as green as spring leaves, but he looked just as nervous and scared as she was. She gave him a shy smile and a tiny wave. He relaxed a little and gave her a crooked grin before waving back. "Aggress, Adrien," his papa said sternly, glancing at his watch. The person behind the desk asked a few questions, then had the boy's parents signing something before they turned and left the dining hall. Marinette wondered if she would see him again. Maybe she could make friends after all. The rest of that day was learning the counselors' names, the camp rules, which cabin she would be in, and what camp team she was on. There were so many activities that it made her head spin a little, but after a simple supper and lights out, Marinette felt the wellness of sadness open again in her chest. She left the room she shared with 3 other girls and went into the common room, where the counselors were sitting, talking softly. "Miss Kay, may I sit on the porch outside?" she asked, rubbing her eyes with the heel of a hand. "Feeling homesick, my dear?" the pretty lady asked kindly. She nodded, her shoulders slumping. "Is this your first time away from home?" asked Miss Carol. "Yeah, I was scared to come. I don't have any friends at home, and I don't know anyone here, so my mum and papa are all I have." "It's okay to be afraid, Marinette. That's how we know we can be brave. Making friends takes bravery sometimes, but just give it a try," Miss Kay said. "And I think it's okay for you to take a few minutes outside." Miss Carol nodded. "Maybe the fresh air and some stargazing will help you feel better. You can see a lot more stars out here than you can in the city." "Thank you," she murmured and went to sit on the porch. The night air was cool after the heat of the day, and the sky above was painted with the swaths of stars that arched over the top of the trees. She let out a long breath in the dark, trying to let the fear and loneliness fade away, only to hear an equal sigh drifting to her on the light breeze. Marinette turned her head and saw a boy with light hair sitting on the porch of the cabin next to hers. He wiped his eyes and clutched some kind of stuffed animal to his chest. He seemed so sad that she couldn't just leave him there. What was it Miss Kay had said? Making friends takes bravery. She stepped down onto the gravel path and walked the dozen or so steps to where he sat. "Are you sad too?" she asked kindly. He looked at her with wide eyes staring. It was the same boy as she'd seen in front of them in the checking line. "Yes? No, I don't know," he said, sounding defeated. "Father said boys shouldn't cry." "Your father sounds stuffy," she said. "May I sit with you?" He wiped his eyes again and nodded mutely. "My papa says that sometimes a good cry can set the world to right. Washing things clean, you know." The boy shrugged. Tentatively, Marinette patted him on the shoulder. "I miss my folks too. It's okay to be sad about it." "Is it?" "Yeah. I don't know anyone here. I only have one friend back home, but she's..." He wrinkled his face in concentration. "She's kind of bossy. She didn't want to come." "I don't know anyone here either." She looked down for a minute, fiddling with her ruffles on the bottom of her pajama shirt. "At least you have someone to cuddle at night." She gestured to the dark blob in his arms. "Oh, this is Blackie. He's been with me forever," he sighed. "Father didn't want me to bring him. He said the other boys would make fun of me." She looked at him for a long moment, trying to think of something to cheer him up. Finally, she reached out and took the long black paw of the whatever it was and shook it seriously. "Hello, Mr. Blackie. My name's Marinette. I'm honored to make your acquaintance." With the other hand, she gave a mock curtsy with the ruffled edge of her nightshirt. The boy giggled. He had a great laugh. Standing up, he bowed at the waist like a prince out of a fairy tale. "Pleased to meet you, Marinette. My name's Adrien." "Nice to meet you, Adrien." Now it was her turn to giggle. The sound of the door opening startled them both. "Marinette!" Miss Carol called out, then caught sight of her. "It's time for you to get back into bed." With a sigh, Marinette got up and brushed off the back of her pajamas. Adrien grabbed her hand before she could step off the porch. "Will I see you tomorrow, Marinette?" He sounded so anxious that she reached out and gave him a hug. "Of course. We're neighbors, aren't we?" "Yeah. Good night." As Miss Carol followed her back into the cabin, she said, "See, making friends isn't that hard now, is it?" Marinette smiled. Maybe it wasn't so hard after all. Adrien was a lot of fun to be with. He was a little shy at first, but once he got to know her, he turned out to have a collection of the craziest jokes Marinette had ever heard and seen, willing to spill them all to make her laugh, even at the weirdest of times. "Hey, Marinette, why did the 2-4s skip dinner?" he asked over their own dinner on the second day. She looked at him blankly. "Because they already ate." She giggled slightly. "Good one." "What kind of dog does a magician have?" Another joke so soon? I don't know. "A labricator!" She laughed until her throat was dry. She took a big swallow of a fruit punch just as he said, "What do you call an elephant that doesn't matter?" She tried to wave her hands to tell him to stop, but he happily declared, "An irrelevant!" Marinette hadn't known it was possible to spray liquid out of your nose and mouth at the same time. Adrien's eyes widened as he took in the sight of the table monitor, a teenager named Michael, covered in punch as he brought more rolls to the table. He burst into a fit of giggles, clutching his sides. "You're funnier than any joke, Marinette," Adrien crowed, looking at her with happy eyes. Embarrassed as she was, Marinette couldn't help but laugh too. "What are we making again?" Adrien asked one afternoon as they sat outside the craft cabin, surrounded by beads and strings. "Friendship bracelets," Marinette replied as she threaded pink beads onto a red piece of yarn. "Well, mine isn't very friendly," he muttered, sticking his tongue out the corner of his mouth in concentration as yet another bead slipped off his own red string. "That's because you forgot to tie the knot in the bottom, silly." She carefully set hers down and tied the special knot her mom had shown her. "There you go. Now the beads will stay put." "Where did you learn how to make things like this?" he asked, thrilled that the light blue bead he threaded stayed on the string. "It's kind of a family thing," she replied, trying to decide between a bright yellow bead and a dark green one. "My parents are bakers, so making things is kind of in my blood. Plus, making things for people I love makes me happy." She held up the beads for him to see. "Which one do you like better?" He looked down at them. "I'd go with the green one," he sighed, looking off into the forest beyond. "My father makes things too, sort of. He's a designer. He is not always there." "What does he design?" "Clothes," he answered with a shrug. "That sounds nice. Clothes is fun to play with. Some is fuzzy, some is fluffy, some smooth. He must have a lot of fun." "I wouldn't know. He's very busy with his work." He dug through the box of beads. "He never talks about it with me. But I have my mom, and she's amazing. She homeschools me, so she is also my teacher. She teaches me all sorts of fun stuff, maths and science and music and flowers and other cultures." "Flowers and music sounds nice, and it would be cool to learn about other cultures, especially China, since my great uncle and cousins live there. But you can keep the maths and the science. Too many numbers makes my head hurt." "Yeah, my friend back home is like that too. She's always asking me to help her with her homework, but then she ends up painting her nails or something while I do it for her." "You're right. She does sound bossy. There." She held up the bracelet she had finished for him to see. "That looks great," he said. "What about mine? Can you show me how to tie that loop on the knot so you can wear it?" "You made it for me?" she asked, surprised. "Yeah. You're my friend, and these are friendship bracelets, aren't they?" "Yeah, and mine is for you too. Here, let me show you how to make it into a bracelet. Why did you choose a duck bead?" "Because the sun shines off your hair like duck feathers," he said, as if it was obvious. "And I like feathers, even if I'm allergic." She gave a snort that turned into a giggle. "You can be such a dork, but you're my friend too, Adrien." Miss Carol looked at them sternly, hands on hips. "Okay, tell me what happened." "Andrew was making fun of Adrien's stuffed cat," Marinette growled, clutching a fistful of tissues to her bleeding nose. "But that doesn't explain how the three of you got into a fight." That bully pushed Marinette down when she told him to stop. Adrien exclaimed angrily, throwing down the ice pack he had been holding to his swollen eye, the daisy crown she had made for him falling over one ear. My mum told me that gentleman never hits a girl or lets her get hurt. I had to defend Marinette, Miss Carol. And I couldn't stand there and let him hurt Adrien either, she said staunchly. Adrien had leapt onto the bigger boy with all ferocity of a wild animal, hitting him several times before Andrew had flipped him and started punching his face. That shook Marinette out of her shock, and she threw herself at the bully to defend her best friend. Miss Carol sighed and shook her head. I can see where you're coming from, kids, but fighting should be the last resort. You should have gone to an adult and reported it. As it is, I will have to report this to your parents. It is camp policy, but I'll explain the circumstances and hopefully they will let you stay, okay? They both nodded as she left the room to use the phone in the nurse's office. Does your nose still hurt? Adrien asked, staring at her out of his good eye. It's sore, but you're worth it, she said simply. How's your eye? He shrugged. I want to be a pirate when I grow up anyway. Might as well start now. You talk, she giggled, bumping his shoulder with hers. Thank you for being there for me. You too, you know. You're my best friend, Marinette. She threw her arms around him in a big hug. He hugged her back just as hard. Okay, kiddos. Does everyone have their snacks and water bottles? Miss Kay asked as she counted heads a final time. Yes, ma'am, the crowd choruses. This is going to be a long hike. Has everyone gone to the bathroom? Asked Thomas, one of the boy counselors. Some of the girls giggled and most of the boys made disgusting noises. Marinette rolled her eyes. Why do boys think it's funny to make fart jokes? As the king of jokes, I couldn't say, Adrien said with a snicker. Puns are where it's at. Playing with words is so much more fun than... Are you sure they're not making elephant noises? She nudged him with her elbow. You mean irrelevant noises, don't you? He giggled. All right, everyone, let's move out, Thomas called, waving his hand in the direction of their hike. They walked for several miles, the counselors pointing out bird nests, animal tracks, and interesting plants. It was all amazing to a kid from the city, and Marinette drank it in, but the waterfall took her breath away. Water cascaded about 2 stories into a clear pool at the bottom, surrounded by sweet-smelling ferns and violets. Some kids splashed in the water while others sat down to enjoy the snacks, but Adrien and Marinette wanted to explore. They climbed to the top of the waterfall, enjoying the view and the warmth of the sun shining down on them. Hey, what's that? Adrien asked, pointing to a large crack between 2 boulders. I don't know, just a crack? With all this water, cracks would happen in winter, right? Yeah, but this one is pretty deep. He scrambled over the large stones and stuck his head inside the crack. Adrien, don't! There might be animals in there. I think it's bigger. Cool. I think there's a cave back there. Come on! He grabbed her hand and pulled her through the crack. They squeezed their way through a very tight space that angled down and down until it opened into a large dark space. Hold on a sec, he said, letting go of her hand to rummage through his backpack. Adrien? She stammered, trembling at standing alone in the dark, with her light-blind eyes making monsters in shades of red and green. There! A flashlight clicked on in his hand, illuminating the large space. They stared in wonder, for on the walls of the cave were pictures. Deer, cattle, horses, bears, lions. Some creatures she couldn't even recognize. An entire menagerie of animals painted around them. Wow! Adrien exclaimed, his voice echoing back to them 100 folds from the shadows. His eyes widened at the sound, and he laughed loudly, letting it ring out of the large space. Marinette grinned at how happy he was at his discovery, tracing her fingers along the back of the animals that flowed around the walls of the room. She saw something strange at the far end of the room. "Adrien, come here, check this out." The light bobbed over to her, shining on the wall in front of her. There, in an otherwise empty corner of the painting, were 2 handprints. But they were done in reverse, with the cream and the orange colour of the wall showing the hand itself outlined in a dark ochre splattered around the negative space. She placed her small hand inside the large one. Adrien stood beside her and did the same, their hands holding those of artists long gone. "This is amazing, isn't it?" he whispered. "Yeah." "We should keep this our secret space. Make it our own clubhouse or something." "Adrien, we can't. We can't keep this to ourselves. It's too beautiful. We have to tell the counselors." He sighed, clearly disappointed. "I guess you're right." He kicked a loose stone with his toe. "It would have been cool, though." She took his hand and gave it a comforting squeeze. "Yeah, but how about we build our own clubhouse in the woods around the camp? I know of a fallen tree behind the dining hall, and we have all the branches we need. I know it's not the same, but it will be ours." He wrapped her in a sudden hug. "You're the best, Marinette. That sounds like the greatest. Our own secret clubhouse. Even if it won't be as miraculous as this." She giggled as he stumbled over the large word. "Then we'll just have to start the Miraculous Club." The last week of camp was a blur as they scrounged materials for the clubhouse. The fallen oak tree behind the dining hall must have been the largest tree in France from the size of it, and acted as a perfect starting point. Its trunk and branches formed 2 walls, and it was easy to tie some string between the branches and the roots to form a third. Adrien found a piece of plywood left over from some repairs, and the caretaker said he could use it. Marinette found a broken baseball backboard in the sports supplies that made for a perfect door. They even brought some paint from the craft cabin and made their own versions of the negative handprints they had found on the wall inside. It was their special place. It held giggles and jokes, tickle fights and tea parties, and secrets and silliness. It was the best part of the summer, but, as they would later learn, all good things must come to an end. Marinette stood in the parking lot, her parents loading up a small trunk. A large man with a stony expression was loading Adrien's things in the back of a limo, while Adrien's parents stood nearby, talking on cell phones. Marinette would have been gawking at them if her eyes weren't full of tears. She clung to Adrien, her hands fistful with the fabrics of his shirt. "I don't want to go," she sobbed. "I don't want to go back to being alone." He sniffled, hugging her back just as tightly. "Me either." Hearing the sadness in his voice, she tried to brave it for him, her best friend. "Write to me?" He nodded into her shoulder. "Every day. I'll miss your hugs. And I'll miss your jokes." "Hey, what did the light bulb say to his sweetheart?" "What?" "I love you a lot." They both giggled at the lame joke. "Here." He handed her Blackie, tucking him into the crook of her arm. "That way you don't have to be alone anymore, and whenever you get lonely, you can tell him, and he can tell me. Then he can pass on my jokes and your hugs, 'kay?" She sniffled and blinked her eyes hard, rubbing the soft cat's paw against her cheek. "But I don't have..." "Wait a minute!" She ran to the side of the parking lot to a patch of wild daisies and plucked one. "Here, it's a daisy promise that we'll always be friends, and because you are bright and friendly like a daisy." Then she cocked her head. "Though, come to think of it, you probably make a better buttercup." He giggled. His smile was wide and full once more. "I would have said a buttercup." She grinned. "Well, that's you dog," she replied, tapping his nose with her finger. "Come on, Marinette, time to go," her papa said. She threw her arms around Adrien one last time. "Write to me, you promise?" Always. You too. Yeah. Come along, Adrien, his papa grumbled, an irritated look on his face. We need to be getting home. He pulled Adrien away, her friend's hands clutching hers for as long as he could until he had to let go, accidentally taking her friendship bracelet with him. Papa! Marinette! Keep it! She called. I already have something that reminds me of you. They both got into the separate cars and drove away, Marinette cuddling with Blackie all the way home. It wasn't going to be as lonely, she decided, not when she had Blackie to cuddle with every day and Adrien's letters to look forward to. It had been the best summer ever. The summer she had made her first friend. Thank you for listening to Childhood. I hope you enjoyed it. Make sure you smash that like button, comment down below what you think of it, and make sure you look out for tomorrow's story called Just Friends. So make sure you subscribe, press that notification button so you do not miss out, and make sure you comment down below what you think of it. And I hope you are good, and I will speak to you soon. Bye!